Welcome to Reddit's for Sleep, friends. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight? And what time is it where you are? Feel free to leave a comment down below. It's always comforting to know we're sharing this quiet moment together, no matter how far apart. Now, let's settle in and drift softly into our first story. Story 1. My husband's weekly errands were a lie until I followed him one Sunday. I never expected my marriage to become a place where silence screamed louder than words. We've been married for 12 years. Not perfect years, not movie script years. Just normal years, birthdays, bills, Sunday grocery runs, the occasional getaway when work didn't get in the way. But it was the Sundays that started to gnaw at me. About a year ago, my husband Mark started this new habit. Every Sunday morning, right after breakfast, he'd stretch, kiss me on the cheek, and say, "I'm going to run errands. Be back soon." Sometimes he'd bring back paper towels or some detergent. Other times, nothing at all. He always claimed things were out of stock. At first, I didn't think much of it. But the routine became rigid. Same time, same vague reasons. And something changed in his demeanor when he'd return. Not guilt, not joy, just a distant calm, like he'd just left a part of himself somewhere and hadn't picked it back up. I asked once, casually, where he went. He smiled. Just around. Stores. Sometimes I stopped for coffee. But we had a coffee machine. A good one. He used to love it. So why go elsewhere? I'm not proud of what I did next, but sometimes a woman's gut speaks louder than reason. Last Sunday, I pretended to sleep in while watching him from half-lidded eyes. He got dressed neatly, too neatly, like he was heading to something planned, not groceries. He left at 8:15 a.m. I waited 10 minutes, then followed. I stayed far behind, keeping 2 cars between us. He drove calmly, radio on, tapping his fingers on the wheel like he always did when he was thinking. We didn't go to the store. We pulled into a quiet suburb, into a small cul-de-sac I'd never been to. He parked in front of a beige house with blue shutters. A moment later, the door opened. Out stepped a woman, late 30s, long dark curls, holding a toddler in one hand and a diaper bag in the other. My husband took the bag, kissed her cheek, and gently picked up the child. I felt the air leave my lungs. I parked 2 blocks away, heart racing like a war drum. I didn't approach. I couldn't. I just sat there and watched. They went back inside, together, like a family. I waited an hour. 2. I was about to drive off when I saw them come back out, the 3 of them. He buckled the child into the car seat of his car. She waved. He drove off. And I followed. Again. But this time, he didn't return to our house. He went to a daycare center, one closed on Sundays, but apparently open for some sort of parent-child program. I parked and watched him walk in with the toddler. The way he held that child, you'd think he was born to be a father. Only, he's never wanted kids with me. Said he didn't believe he'd be a good father. Too much baggage from his own childhood, he'd say. He told me that with tears in his eyes once. Told me he couldn't bear the idea of screwing up a kid the way his dad had screwed him up. But here he was, loving, gentle, present. I didn't confront him, not yet. When he came home hours later, he looked lighter, like whatever burden he'd been carrying had been lifted. He kissed me on the forehead and asked if I wanted Thai or sushi for dinner. I nodded. I couldn't find my voice. That night, I cried in the shower. I confronted him 3 days later. Not in anger, just quiet, steady truth. We sat across from each other in the living room. I told him everything that I'd followed him, seen the house, seen the child. I asked if it was his. He didn't deny it. He stared at the floor for a long time, then whispered, "His name is Eli." Turns out Eli's from a relationship he had before we met, a woman he'd dated on and off in college. He didn't even know she was pregnant until 3 years ago. She didn't want anything from him, no money, no support, but he chose to be present, just not publicly. "I didn't tell you," he said, "because I thought you'd leave. I thought you'd see me differently." But I couldn't abandon him either. I didn't know how to feel. Betrayed, yes. Lied to. But also, not fully surprised. That strange sense I'd had for months, the emotional distance, the low hum of guilt in his presence, it all made sense now. He didn't cheat on me. Not physically, at least, but he cheated me out of truth, out of the chance to know the real him, the whole him. We've been in therapy since, sometimes separately, sometimes together. I've met Eli once. He has Mark's smile and his stubbornness. I don't know what our future holds. Some days I want to scream. Others, I want to hold Mark and say, "Let's figure this out." But I know this much. Secrets fester, and love built on half-truths will always teeter on cracked foundations. Still, maybe cracked doesn't mean broken. Just human. Story 2. My sister ruined my engagement, then acted like the victim. Growing up, my sister and I were always close, or at least I thought we were. She's 2 years older, prettier in that traditional way, always had boys' attention without trying. I was more bookish, quieter, the one teachers liked. People would always say things like, "You're lucky to have a sister like her." And I believed it. We rarely fought. She helped me with makeup for school dances, and I edited her college essays. We supported each other. I never imagined she'd be the one to destroy something I held so dear. I met Daniel 3 years ago. He was thoughtful, kind, not overly showy, just a stable, emotionally intelligent man. We clicked over mutual love for hiking and podcasts. He was the kind of man who brought you flowers just because it was a Tuesday, who listened when you spoke, who remembered your dog's name from a story you told once in passing. When he proposed last year, it was intimate and sweet. Just us, at a quiet lake we'd visited on our third date. I said yes, through happy tears. We decided to keep it quiet for a few weeks, just to enjoy it ourselves before the inevitable flood of wedding planning. I told my sister first. Her reaction was odd. She smiled wide, too wide, and said, "Wow, that's amazing. You're really lucky." But her eyes didn't match the smile. And then she asked, "Are you sure you're not rushing into this?" We'd been together almost 3 years. If anything, we were taking our time. At the time, I brushed it off as protectiveness. She'd had her heart broken before. Maybe she was just projecting. I didn't want to assume the worst. But over the next month, things started to change. Daniel became distant. He started canceling dates, not calling like he used to. I asked if everything was okay, and he'd always say yes, just stressed from work. But his eyes stopped meeting mine when he said it. One night, we were supposed to meet for dinner. He canceled last minute again. I broke down crying to my sister, overwhelmed and confused. She hugged me and said, "Maybe he's just not who you thought he was." That was the night I started doubting everything. 2 weeks later, Daniel asked to meet in person. He looked exhausted, nervous. We sat on a park bench near our favorite bookstore, and he said the words I'll never forget. "I need to be honest. Someone told me something that made me question everything. I didn't want to believe it, but it's been eating at me." I asked what he meant. He told me my sister had contacted him privately and said I had a habit of lying, that I'd cheated on my ex, that I had been messaging an old flame recently. She even showed him screenshots. Fake ones, I assume now. I felt physically ill. I had never cheated on anyone in my life, never even considered it. I asked him if he believed her. He said he didn't know what to believe anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory I had with my sister, trying to make sense of it, trying to see if I'd missed some red flag all these years. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it outright. She just said, "I was looking out for you. I didn't want you to end up hurt." I asked her why she'd lie. She shrugged, said something vague about gut feelings and men like Daniel hiding things. I told her I knew it wasn't about Daniel. It was about me, about jealousy, about control. She cried, made a scene, told my parents I was attacking her and that she was only trying to protect me. For a while, I was the villain. My mother begged me to make peace, saying sisters fight, and it wasn't worth tearing the family apart. But something broke in me. I stopped talking to her. I moved out of the apartment I'd been renting with a roommate near my parents and into a tiny studio across town. Daniel tried to reconnect weeks later, said he realized the truth, that he shouldn't have doubted me, but by then, something had shattered. Not just between me and him, between me and the idea of trust. It's been 10 months since all this happened. I still haven't spoken to my sister. She sends texts sometimes, pictures of our childhood, memes, things she thinks are funny. I don't reply. Some nights I lie in bed and wonder if I'll ever feel that kind of closeness with anyone again. Not even romantic closeness, just the kind of trust where you can hand someone your heart and know they won't stomp on it for sport. People say blood is thicker than water. But they forget that saying is often misquoted. The full version is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And I'm learning that a chosen family, the people who earn your love, are sometimes stronger than the ones you're born with. I still don't understand why she did it. But maybe some things we're not meant to understand. Maybe we're just meant to survive them. Story 3. I found a stranger living in my late dad's house, and no one believes me. My dad passed away 9 months ago. He died peacefully in his sleep heart failure. He was only 68. We weren't close in the traditional sense. He was quiet, old school, raised me on routines and radio silence. But there was love there, always. He never missed a birthday, never forgot to gas up my car if he borrowed it. He just wasn't good with words. When he passed, I was listed as the executor of his estate. He left behind a modest house in a quiet rural area, about 40 minutes from the city. It wasn't fancy, just a single story with a creaky porch and yellowing wallpaper. But it was his, paid off, full of quiet memories. I hadn't been out there much in the past couple of years. My job, my life, everything was in the city. But when he passed, I drove out every other weekend to clean the place up, slowly box his things, handle probate. Emotionally exhausting, but necessary. About 3 months ago, things started getting strange. I arrived one Saturday morning and noticed something was off. The back gate was unlatched. My dad was always militant about locking things. Inside, a few things were moved, not stolen, just rearranged. The ashtray that sat by his recliner was on the kitchen counter. A photo frame was face down on the hallway floor. I assumed I'd left it that way without realizing grief messes with your memory, right? But then I found a plate in the sink. It wasn't mine. I hadn't eaten there. The sponge was still damp. I stood in that small kitchen, silence pressing in on my chest, wondering if I was going mad. I checked the locks. All intact. No signs of forced entry. I told my cousin about it later that week, half laughing it off. He said I was overthinking. that maybe I just forgot being there more recently. But the next time I went back, there was a pair of muddy boots by the back door. They weren't my dad's. They weren't mine. I stood completely still, listening. Nothing. I checked every room. Empty. I didn't call the police. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid they'd think I was imagining it. That there'd be nothing to report. I changed the locks. All of them. Front, back, even the garage. I double-checked every window, sealed the old crawl space hatch with screws. And I stopped going at night. Then one morning, I pulled into the driveway and immediately froze. There was smoke coming from the chimney. Someone was inside. My first reaction wasn't fear. It was rage. I felt violated. My father's home, his memories, were being trampled by someone else. I stormed in. The front door was locked, my lock, but I had the key. I opened it. Quietly. And then, nothing. No sound. No fire in the fireplace. No one in the living room. Kitchen, spotless. I ran from room to room, yelling, but it was empty. I stood in the hallway for 10 full minutes, heart hammering. The chimney was still warm. I left, locked everything, drove straight to the police station. The officer was polite, but clearly skeptical. Are you sure it wasn't just a squatter who left? I asked them to do a welfare check next time they were in the area. I filed a report. They didn't find anyone. And yet, it kept happening. I started documenting it. Every plate, every footprint. I took pictures. I even bought a trail cam and set it up behind the back gate, hidden in a tree. I didn't tell anyone. 2 weeks later, I got something. A man, late 40s, maybe early 50s, thin, wearing a gray hoodie and what looked like work pants. He appeared in the frame at 2:13 a.m., walked to the back door, then vanished out of frame. The camera didn't catch him coming out. I showed the footage to the police. They opened a formal trespassing case, told me not to return alone. That was the last time they spoke to me. I've been out to the house 4 times since. Each time, something's changed. Curtains drawn differently. A blanket draped over the recliner. Once, a cup of tea was sitting half full on the kitchen table, still faintly warm. And yet, the house remains locked. No broken windows. No signs of entry. I feel like I'm losing my mind. No one, not the police, not my friends, really believes me. My cousin even suggested it might be grief hallucinations, like people get when they lose someone and see shadows of them out of the corner of their eye. But I know what I've seen. Someone is living there. Or at least returning there. Like it's their home. Like they have a right to it. I stopped going last month. I still get alerts from the trail cam. The motion sensors go off, always around 2 to 3 a.m., every few nights, like clockwork. Part of me wants to drive out there again, this time with someone, maybe catch them. Part of me thinks I shouldn't. Maybe it's someone my dad knew. Maybe it's someone who's grieving too. Or maybe it's someone much worse. I don't know. But the house doesn't feel like it's mine anymore. And I don't think it ever really was. Story 4. My ex-wife moved in across the street and pretends she doesn't know me. I live in a quiet neighborhood, the kind with picket fences, early dog walkers, and mailboxes decorated with hand-painted flowers. I moved here after my divorce 2 years ago. Small house, manageable mortgage, close to work, peaceful. Or at least it was. 3 months ago, the house across the street went up for rent. Within a week, a moving truck pulled in. I stood at my window, sipping coffee, curious. I saw a woman step out of the truck, talking to the movers, directing traffic. I remember thinking she looked oddly familiar. The kind of face your memory taps you on the shoulder about, but doesn't fully name. Then I saw her again, the next day. And my stomach dropped. It was her. Hannah. My ex-wife. I hadn't seen her in nearly 3 years, not since our divorce hearing, where she sat stone-faced across from me and said exactly 7 words the entire time. I want nothing but what I'm owed. We were married for 5 years. It ended badly. Slowly, painfully, like something decaying in the corner of a room no one wants to enter. She left, moved cities, blocked me on everything. And now, she lives directly across the street from me. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Maybe she didn't realize it was me. Maybe the listing didn't show the house across the way. But within a few days, I knew she knew. Because she never once looked at me. We cross paths. Often our driveways practically face each other. I'll be grabbing the mail. She'll be getting into her car. We're less than 20 feet apart. And she acts like I don't exist. No glance, no flicker of recognition. Nothing. The first time I was stunned into silence. The second time, I waved a hesitant, awkward little gesture. Her eyes passed over me like I was furniture. I'm not imagining it. She knows. I've watched her talk to other neighbors, smile, laugh, nod politely. But not me. Never me. At night, I find myself staring out the window, coffee in hand, lights dimmed, just watching. Not in a creepy way, I just don't understand it. This ghost of someone I loved, now haunting the sidewalk across from mine like I'm the stranger. What makes it worse is, I don't even hate her. We didn't cheat. We didn't scream. We just drifted. Life chipped away at us. Job stress, miscarriages, quiet resentments. The kind of heartbreak that doesn't burn, but erodes. I remember the last night she lived in our old apartment. She slept facing the wall. I watched her shoulders rise and fall and wondered if we'd ever come back from where we'd gone. We didn't. And now, she buys groceries at the same shop as me, parks 2 houses down when her driveway's full. Sometimes she walks a golden retriever I don't recognize. And never, ever looks in my direction. I don't know what to do with that. I've thought about confronting her, just walking up and saying something like, "Hey, so, what are the odds?" But I don't think I could handle it if she continued the act. If she stared through me again, like I'm no one. So I say nothing. One of our neighbors, an older woman named Joyce, told me the new lady across the street seems really nice, but keeps to herself. I nodded and smiled. I wonder if she tells people the same about me. The strange part? I find myself grieving all over again. Not the marriage. That's done. We weren't right, but the familiarity, the shared history, the inside jokes, the rhythm of knowing someone so deeply that even their footsteps in the hallway are recognizable. And now she walks that hallway in another house. 20 feet away. As if I never existed. Maybe she's protecting herself. Maybe I remind her of who she was back then, of a version of life she wants no trace of. I try not to take it personally, but it feels personal. I keep thinking there will be a moment, some accidental eye contact, a dropped bag of groceries, a broken down car, a flicker of, "Hey, I know you." But weeks pass, nothing changes. I told a friend recently, and he laughed. Said it sounded like something from a low-budget drama. But it's real. Every morning, I open the blinds and wonder what version of her I'll see today. The woman watering the plants, the one waving at the mailman, or the one getting into her car without once acknowledging the man who used to hold her every night. This isn't love. It's not even bitterness. It's just something hollow, familiar, strange. And it lives across the street from me. Story 5. I got fired for doing the right thing, and I'd do it again. I worked at the same logistics company for nearly 6 years. It wasn't glamorous, mostly spreadsheets, invoices, coordinating shipments, and dealing with customer complaints, but it paid well, had benefits, and my team was solid. I had a good rhythm. Wake up early, coffee, emails, lunch at my desk, go home tired but proud of a job well done. Until last November. That's when everything changed. My department brought in a new manager named Philip. Fresh from some bigger firm, shiny resume, confident smile, expensive shoes. At first, everyone liked him. He talked about efficiency, transparency, streamlining reporting lines, the usual buzzwords. But under the surface, things started to shift. He began firing longtime employees quietly. One day they were there, next day their desk was cleared out, and we'd get an email saying they'd moved on to pursue other opportunities. Morale dropped. Everyone started watching their backs. Still, I kept my head down, did my work, avoided the politics. Until one afternoon, I was reviewing some financials. As part of my role, I had limited access to certain invoice logs and payment systems. Nothing too deep, just enough to cross-check shipment expenses with vendor payments. That's when I noticed something odd. A trucking company, Westway Haulage, had received over $28,000 in payments over 3 months, but they weren't in our main vendor database. I'd never even heard of them. Curious, I dug a little deeper. There were no associated shipment records, no contact info beyond a vague P.O. box. It felt wrong. So I flagged it. I emailed Philip, CC'd Finance, and politely asked if someone could verify the vendor. Maybe it was a subsidiary we'd recently onboarded. He didn't respond. Instead, the next morning, he called me into his office. He smiled, but his voice was icy. "You're not authorized to question vendor payments, Liam," he said. "Stick to your assigned tasks." I apologized and said I meant no harm, just thought there might be an error. He nodded, dismissed me. But the next week, my system access was reduced. I could no longer view payment logs, only shipment records. And 2 days later, HR scheduled a performance review. I'd never had a negative review in 6 years. In the meeting, they told me I had been disruptive and creating unnecessary tension between departments. A week later, I was let go. Official reason: organizational restructuring. No severance, no warning. Just a cardboard box and a long drive home with a hollow feeling in my chest. I spent weeks blaming myself, wondering if I should have kept my mouth shut. My savings were decent, but not enough to sit around forever. The job market was slow, and every time I filled out an application, I had to explain why I left my last role. But something kept bothering me. So I did something I probably shouldn't have. I reached out to a former coworker, someone in finance I trusted. Off the record, she told me she'd looked into Westway Haulage after I left. The company didn't exist. The payments were real, but they were being funneled to a shell account. No trucks, no shipments, nothing. And here's the part that still makes my blood run cold. The account was linked to an LLC registered in Philip's cousin's name. She said she'd reported it anonymously. A month later, Philip resigned. The company issued a quiet press release saying he was pursuing new ventures. There was no investigation, no charges, just silence. The finance colleague who told me all this, she was let go 2 weeks later. Same story, no warning, no payout. And yet, I don't regret it. I lost a stable job. Yes, I lost sleep, confidence. For a while, I even lost my sense of self, but I kept my integrity. And maybe that doesn't buy groceries, but it lets me sleep at night. I've started consulting now. Smaller clients. Honest work. It's not as steady, but it's clean. And I don't have to look over my shoulder. Sometimes I still drive past the old office. Lights on late. New faces in the windows. Life moving forward like I was never there. But I know what I did. And I'd do it again. Story 6. I took in my estranged mom after 20 years, and she pretended nothing happened. I hadn't seen my mother in over 20 years. She left when I was 9. No note, no goodbye. One day, she was making pancakes. The next day, she was gone. My dad told me she needed space and that she was working through something. But even as a kid, I knew he was protecting me from the truth. The truth was, she chose to leave. She missed birthdays, school plays, doctor's appointments. She missed the time I broke my arm, missed my high school graduation. She didn't call, didn't write, no postcards, no Facebook messages, nothing. By the time I was 15, I stopped wondering where she was. By 20, I told people she was dead. Not out of spite, just because it was easier than explaining the truth. Then, out of nowhere, 4 months ago, I got a call from a hospital in Phoenix. My number was listed as her emergency contact. I don't know how they got it. I assume she'd been following my life, quietly, maybe through an old relative or social media. But suddenly, I was the person they called when she collapsed at a gas station. Diabetes, dehydration, chronic illness that had gone unchecked for too long. She was 63 and frail, with white hair I didn't recognize, and a raspy voice that barely carried across the phone line. She looked shocked when I walked into the hospital room. She said, "You look just like your dad." I didn't know what to say to that. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat beside her bed and stared at a woman who had once held my hand on the walk to kindergarten and then disappeared without explanation. She didn't apologize. Not then. Not in the days that followed. When they discharged her, she had nowhere to go. She'd been living out of motels, working odd jobs when her health allowed. Her body was giving out. She had no savings, no home. And I took her in. I had the room. I had the stability. I didn't do it because I forgave her. I did it because it felt like the right thing to do, even if my heart was still heavy with everything she'd taken from me. The first night in my home, she sat on my couch and smiled like it was 1999 again. She complimented the wallpaper. Told me she liked the layout of the kitchen. Talked about how she'd always wanted to visit California again someday. Not one word about the years she missed. No, I'm sorry I left. No, I should have tried to come back. Just surface level conversation, weather, TV, the way my dog looked like one she used to have. It was surreal. For weeks, I cooked her meals, took her to appointments, made sure she had clean blankets and warm clothes. And still nothing. Until one night, I couldn't take it anymore. We were watching some sitcom rerun, and I turned the volume down. I asked her, "Why did you leave?" She blinked, looked at me for a long time, then said, "It was complicated." That was it. I asked again, firmer, "Do you feel bad for it?" She looked away and said, "I was going through a lot." That's the moment I realized something that shook me to my core. She wasn't coming back for me. She never had. She was here now because she had no one else. To her, the past was a closed chapter, but for me, it was still wide open, bleeding on the pages. I started to pull away. I still cared for her, gave her what she needed, made sure she was safe. But emotionally, I went numb. She'd try to chat, joke, ask about work. And I'd nod, keep it short. I wasn't angry anymore, just empty. Last week, she asked if we could go to the beach together. Said she hadn't seen the ocean in years. I told her I had plans. I didn't. I just couldn't handle pretending everything was fine anymore.
Sometimes I look at her and try to remember the mom from my childhood, the one who sang lullabies and made grilled cheese with too much butter. But that version of her froze in time the day she left. And this woman? I don't know her. I don't hate her. But I don't love her either. I grieve for the mother I needed, the one who never came back. People tell me I'm doing a good thing, that I'm being the bigger person, that I'll never regret showing compassion. Maybe they're right. But some nights when the house is quiet and I hear her breathing in the next room, I wonder if I'm just trying to heal a wound that never closed. And if it's okay to admit, that part of me still wishes she'd never called. Story 7. My best friend stole my idea and became successful overnight. Sarah and I had been best friends since the 8th grade. We met in science class, paired up for a lab project, and instantly clicked. Over the years, we shared everything: late-night phone calls, college dorm rooms, heartbreaks, dreams. We were the kind of friends who could finish each other's sentences, who knew when the other needed a laugh or a shoulder to cry on. For years, we talked about starting something together. A business, a passion project, anything that would let us create something meaningful beyond our day jobs. I always had ideas swirling in my head, ideas about connecting people, using technology to solve real problems, things that could grow and make a difference. Sarah, she was the dreamer with the drive. Always pushing, always ready to take risks. About 2 years ago, I finally told her about an idea I'd been thinking about for over a year. It was simple, but powerful, a mobile app for local artists and crafters to showcase their work and connect directly with buyers nearby. We live in a city brimming with creatives, but most of them struggle to find affordable platforms that actually help them sell and build communities. I'd sketched out wireframes, jotted down feature lists, and even mapped out a rough business plan. It wasn't complete, but it was real. Sarah lit up when I shared it. "You have to build this," she said. "I can help. We should do it together." For weeks, we met on weekends. Talked features, brainstormed marketing. Sarah had energy I admired. I loved bouncing ideas off her. Sometimes we stayed up late, plotting launch plans, revenue models, ways to get early users. I wasn't naive. I knew turning ideas into reality would be hard. But having Sarah's support made it feel possible. Then life got busy. I took a new job that ate up my evenings. Sarah was juggling her own side hustles. Our meetings became less frequent. I still believed we'd get to it eventually. But then, one morning, I woke up to a shock. Our local paper had a front page story. New app connects local artists and buyers like never before. The app name was identical to what I'd told Sarah months earlier. I clicked through the article. The design, the features, everything matched my concept. And the founder was Sarah. I stared at the screen in disbelief. I called her. No answer. I texted. Nothing. Days passed. Finally, I sent a long email, careful, polite, asking if we could meet. I wanted to understand, to talk. Her reply was a brief message. "Thanks for the idea." I ran with it. "Wish you luck." My world collapsed. I felt betrayed, like someone had ripped out a piece of me and paraded it on a billboard. Our friendship, once so solid, felt like a lie. I told mutual friends what happened. Some shrugged and said, "Ideas are cheap. Execution is what counts. Others looked away, uncomfortable. I stopped working on my own projects. I felt invisible and powerless. Months went by in silence. Then one day, Sarah reached out. She wanted to meet. I was torn, angry and hurt, but curious. We met at a quiet coffee shop. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her cup. She apologized, said she'd been scared. Afraid I'd say no if she asked to take the lead. Afraid losing the idea meant losing me. She said she regretted how she handled things, but believed she was doing what she had to do. I listened. It wasn't the apology I wanted, not really, but it was something. I told her I was hurt, that trust once broken was hard to fix. We didn't become partners again. But I started building my own projects, inspired by the lessons I learned. I realize sometimes people disappoint you. Sometimes they take what's yours. But what matters is what you do next. The experience taught me about boundaries, about standing up for my work. It taught me that friends can fail you, but that failure can fuel your growth. Today, my own app is in development. It's slower, harder, but it's mine. And every time I doubt, I remember how I almost lost it and found myself instead. Story 8. I caught my neighbor stealing packages, but didn't know what to do. For the first time in years, I found myself feeling uneasy in my own neighborhood. It all started with a small package, a box of specialty coffee beans I'd ordered from a local roaster. I remember the day clearly. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow across the street as the UPS truck pulled up and dropped it off right on my front porch. I'd been looking forward to that package all week. But when I went to pick it up later that evening, it was gone. At first, I thought maybe I'd brought it inside without remembering. The way grief sometimes does to your mind, scatter pieces of reality across days, like a puzzle, missing key parts. But no, the package wasn't in my house. The next week, the same thing happened. This time, it was a gift I'd ordered for my sister's birthday, a set of noise-canceling headphones. I'd carefully wrapped it, added a card. But when the delivery alert pinged, the package vanished before I could retrieve it. That's when I started paying attention. I began leaving notes on my porch, asking neighbors if they'd seen anything. No response. I checked online for tips, read stories about package theft and porch pirates. It was a common problem, especially during the holiday season. One evening, around 8 p.m., I was outside watering my plants when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. A figure, hood pulled up, creeping towards my front steps. I froze. Heart pounding, I watched as the man reached down, grabbed a small box, and hurried away. It was Mike, my next-door neighbor. The same man who always waved hello with a warm smile, who helped carry groceries during last year's snowstorm. I couldn't believe it. The shock quickly turned to confusion. Why would Mike steal from me? I wanted to confront him, but part of me hesitated. Maybe there was a good explanation. Maybe he needed help. So I waited. For a week, I set up a small security camera by my door and checked the footage every morning before work. Sure enough, there was Mike, taking packages over and over. One night, I caught him sitting in his car, opening one of the boxes. It was the birthday gift for my wife. I felt sick to my stomach. I didn't know what to do. Do I call the police? Do I talk to him? Do I pretend I didn't see anything? The next day, I decided to knock on his door. He answered, surprised to see me standing there. I told him what I'd seen, showed him the footage on my phone. At first, he denied it.
said there must be some mistake. But then, tears welled up in his eyes. He told me he'd lost his job months ago. His wife left with the kids. He was struggling, ashamed, desperate. I listened. I told him stealing was wrong, that there were other ways to get help. I offered to connect him with local food banks, support groups, community resources. He promised to stop. For a few weeks, I believed him. But then, one night, my wife's bike disappeared from the garage. Mike wasn't around. We reported it to the police, but the suspect was someone else entirely. Still, the trust was broken. I realized that sometimes people's choices come from pain and desperation. But that doesn't mean you have to accept or ignore it. I installed better security systems, joined the neighborhood watch, and stayed alert. Most importantly, I learned that compassion and boundaries can coexist. You can care for someone's struggles while protecting your own peace. And sometimes, that's the hardest balance to find. Story 9. I found out my dad had a secret family, and what happened next changed everything. My dad was always the rock of our family. The kind of man who worked hard, kept his promises, and made sure we never went without. Growing up, weekends were sacred fishing trips, backyard barbecues, and the quiet comfort of knowing he was always there. So, when he passed last year, it felt like losing a part of myself. My mom and I were going through his things in the attic when she found an old, dusty envelope. It was tucked behind some photo albums, sealed and marked simply with my name. She handed it to me with a trembling hand. "For when you're ready," she said softly. I stared at the envelope for days, afraid of what I might find. Finally, one quiet evening, I opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them written in my dad's handwriting, letters to a woman I'd never heard of, with dates spanning over 20 years. Alongside them were photos of a different family, a woman, 2 children, smiling in a way I recognized from our own old family pictures. I felt my world tilt. Dad had a secret family. A part of him, a whole other life I never knew existed. I confronted my mom. She looked as shattered as I felt. She'd never known. She said she found out only recently, after Dad died, and had kept it from me to protect me. But the secret had already spilled into my life. I reached out to the woman in the photos. Her name was Lisa. She was hesitant at first, but agreed to talk. We exchanged emails, then phone calls. Her kids, my half-siblings, were in their 20s. We shared stories, compared memories of Dad. He was the same man, but different in each of our lives. Meeting them was surreal, a mix of joy, confusion, and loss. I felt like I'd gained a family, but lost a piece of my identity. My mom struggled too. Her grief was layered with betrayal and heartbreak. But over time, she began to accept that Dad was human, imperfect, flawed. We started inviting Lisa and the kids to family gatherings. The holidays were different now. 2 dinners, 2 sets of traditions, new stories added to the old. It wasn't always easy. There were awkward moments, hurt feelings, questions without answers. But it was real. And it was healing. I learned that families aren't just about blood or secrets. They're about connection, forgiveness, and the messy, beautiful ways we love each other, despite everything. Story 10. I finally confronted my childhood bully, and it changed my life. School was a place I dreaded for over a decade. From 5th grade through the end of high school, there was one person who made every day a struggle: Jason. At first, it was little things, snide comments,
name-calling, teasing in the halls. I tried to ignore it, to stay under the radar, hoping he'd get bored and move on. But he didn't. By middle school, the bullying got worse. Trips in the hallway, stolen lunches, whispered rumors that spread like wildfire. I felt trapped, isolated. Teachers told me to stand up for myself, but how do you stand up to someone bigger, louder, and more popular than you? How do you fight when you're scared? I carried the weight of those years with me long after graduation. I felt broken, doubted my worth, avoided social situations, and struggled with trust. Then, years later, life brought me back home for a new job. One chilly morning at the local coffee shop, I saw him. Jason. Older now, quieter. Not the bully I remembered, but a man who looked like he carried his own burdens. He saw me too. Our eyes met. He offered a tentative smile. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I found myself walking over. We talked. Awkward, at first small talk about the weather, jobs, the old neighborhood. Then I gathered the courage. I need to tell you something, I said. He nodded. For years, you made my life miserable. You hurt me in ways I didn't know how to explain until recently. Jason looked down. His smile faded. He admitted he'd been struggling a difficult home life, pressure to fit in, his own fears and insecurities. He apologized sincerely. We talked for hours that day about the past, about pain, about forgiveness. It wasn't just about him. It was about me reclaiming my peace. Since then, I've started healing. Therapy helped me unpack those old wounds. I reconnected with friends I'd pushed away. I learned to set boundaries for myself and others. Confronting Jason wasn't easy, but it was worth it. That conversation freed me. It reminded me that sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most profound growth. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can breathe. Thank you for spending this quiet time with me here on Reddit's for Sleep. I hope these stories brought you calm and comfort as you drift towards restful sleep. If you enjoyed this journey, feel free to come back anytime. You're always welcome here. Wishing you a night full of peaceful dreams and gentle rest. Good night, dear friend.